Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm very excited about this. We are talking about SEO, search engine optimization, specifically unleashing the power of SEO, techniques to boost your website's online presence. I will be presenting as well, and Jonah Alderson will be as well. Let's get into that in one slide here. So, as I mentioned, Jonah is joining us. He's the head of SEO at Yoast. He lives and breathes all things SEO, and I think is perhaps one of the premium resources we have for learning about how to improve our SEO and what we can do to make our SEO more efficient. Myself, I'm Devin Sears. I'm the senior field marketing manager here at Bluehost, and I will be your co-host today. Before we jump into the content, a couple things I want to call out. If you have any issues hearing us, then try restarting and rejoining the room. If you can hear us, let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. I always like to see where people are listening and interact with us in the chat. If you find the chat and let us know where you're from, you can also see there's a Q&A section where you can ask questions. We will probably hold most of those for the end, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. And if we don't answer them, then we'll try to follow up via email afterwards. Also, if this question always comes up, we will be recording this and sending out a recording afterwards. So if you have to drop at any time, don't worry. By registering, you are in for the recording. So thank you for registering. Thank you for joining. Thank you for participating. And if you have any questions, please drop them. We want to make sure that this is educational for you. We want to make sure that you get a lot out of this as well. So today, what we'll be covering, all things SEO, an introduction, what is search engine optimization. We're going to be talking about on-page SEO. That's your content. That's all the things that you can put on your website. We're going to be talking about off-page SEO, backlinks, all that kind of thing, all those kind of things. We're also going to get into the technical side of SEO, things that are more on the server side, but still have weight as how you rank as far as where you show up on the search engine results page. We're also going to be talking about local SEO, like I mentioned, all things SEO, and then measuring and improving and what we can do to make sure we're doing it correctly. And then chapter 8 is cheating. We're going to reveal the tool that can help you do 90% of this. Would you say 90%, Jono? Maybe 90?
Maybe even 95,
95, 90 to 95%. But we have a tool that will help you do a lot of this. So we want to teach you the concepts as best as we can, and then show you what you can do to actually apply this and have it start affecting your site. So
perfect.
Chapter 1, let's just dive right into it. What is SEO and why should I care? SEO, as I mentioned, is search engine optimization. It's the process of improving a website's visibility and ranking in search engine results pages. All of us, I'm sure, have used Google before, and I'm sure all of us, when we go to Google, we click the top 1, 2, or 3 results that we see pop up. And so as we're building our websites, we want to make sure that our sites are ranking as high on that page as they possibly can. So search engine optimization, which we'll refer to pretty much as SEO from here on out, is the practice of making your website rank higher than it was previously.
Than your competitors, I guess, and higher than Wikipedia and higher than everyone else.
Exactly, higher than everyone else. And so there's 2 very popular acronyms that pop up a lot. I feel like whenever we talk about SEO, I'm sure there's more as well, but the 2 that I see all the time is SEO and SERPs, or SERP, which stands for the search engine results page. And that's just basically when you do a search on Google, this is what pops up. So why should we care? Obviously, as you get higher on the page, more people click on your link. That gets you more traffic to your website, more conversions for your sales or building your brand. It helps you establish credibility and authority in the industry and increases your conversions and revenue. Jono, anything you want to add on this before we move forward?
Yeah, just I guess it does it in a different way than, say, paid media or affiliate marketing or other places you might spend it, in that you grow that value and equity over time, and that keeps paying back. We're not talking about spending dollars or pounds or euros every single time you want to get a new visitor from an advert or so on. This is a slow burn, long term growth strategy, as opposed to the kind of fire and forget stuff.
I think that's an amazing call out. There, you can pay to be the highest ranked, but it's not necessarily highest ranked. It's you're paying for that sponsor, that paid spot at the top. So SEO and what we'll be talking about here, this is a lot more organic. This is something that perhaps takes a little bit more effort and more time, but keeps you at that higher spot for much longer.
Yeah.
So by the numbers, the number one results on any Google results page gets almost 30% of all the clicks that go to that. And like I mentioned before, anyone that's gone to Google search results page, I'm sure has experienced exactly that. You're on the page, no one scrolls down and clicks to page 2, 3, or 4 to try to find the best result. Oftentimes, if you don't get what you're looking for in that top 2 or 3 results, you go back up and you change your search in order to try to get the thing that you're looking for. So this is just some statistics that show why you want to be highly ranked on this.
And I think it's something like 70 something percent of all searches that end in or all transactions, all scenarios where people buy online involve search at some point. It's a huge proportion of how we behave and how we research and make product decisions. So yeah, this really is the funnel.
Yeah, that's very well said. Okay, so we talked about why you want it, but let's talk about what exactly it is and how that works. So how do search engines work? When you type a question, or you don't even have to type a question into Google now, you can just type a string of words and it spits out like a billion answers in a second. How does that work? How do they know what websites they should show the user on that search engine results page?
Yeah, so there's essentially 3 parts of that process, and we don't need to get too bogged down in the technical details, but it's worth understanding in principle. So they crawl the web, they explore, they follow links, they click around the internet, and they try and discover web pages. They want to gather all of those up, and then they want to extract all the text, all the images, all the fonts, all the JavaScript, all the bits and pieces on those, and follow those trails and discover more and more pages. And this happens constantly in real time. And then a different system goes, all that stuff that we're finding and ingesting, how do we analyze it? How do we store it? And they build copies of everybody's websites and pages and content, and then they analyze that. And they build an enormous database and many copies of this all around the world. And then the second you type something into the search engine, the second you throw that string into the search query, they analyze all that at phenomenal speed, and they go, what is the thing that you're searching for? And beyond just trying to pattern match the words you've included, they truly try and understand the concepts, the challenges, the questions that are implied in the words that you're using. And then they go, okay, what are the best pages? What are the best results we have in our index that solve that problem and that question? So it's an enormous system of software gathering up everything from the web and then trying to find, for the thing that you've searched for here and now, what is the best thing we have for that?
It's insane to me that it does all that calculation as quickly as it does. You know?
Yeah, fractions of milliseconds.
And the databases that they have must be insanely huge and have so much information stored in them. So it's very impressive, but it also, I think it can be a little bit daunting to a first-time user who is trying to get higher ranked, obviously, so they can get some of that traffic that we just talked about, you know, in that top 10, top 3 positions, which is obviously difficult to do when you have billions of websites that you're competing against. So I think understanding a little bit about how the algorithm works and what it's using to look for and serve results, I don't think this is necessarily applicable knowledge. I don't think that anyone has to change anything on their website based on this, but I think just keeping this in mind as you start looking at some of the other things we'll be talking about today, I think that can be beneficial.
Yeah.
So the algorithm or algorithms, I'm sure they've got a lot in there.
Yeah, so this is the common misconception, right? That there is an algorithm and occasionally there's big updates. And whilst that's true to a degree, the reality is much more nuanced. And what really happens is they have thousands of individual bits of software that are looking for different things and performing different calculations and checking for different signals. And all of these things change and evolve constantly. So we know there are thousands of small updates to these systems every year, and they test them all in minutiae and compare them. And it's really hard to pin down exactly what are the kinds of things that they're looking for and evaluating. And in many cases, they don't even really know, because a lot of this involves machine learning and black boxes and systems that don't really communicate well with humans. But we do know kind of broadly they're looking at these kinds of areas. Things like, at the most basic level, does this page solve the problem of the person who was searching for the thing, right? And to understand that, they might look at things like, well, is the content on the page relevant to the topic? Does this mean the same thing? Is there evidence of quality? And they might involve things like, does this business have a good reputation? Or are the images on the page high resolution? Or does the information that this page provides, is it consistent with the kinds of things that other people say? Or is it obviously different and therefore maybe not right? So they're doing some quite sophisticated analysis, and they're trying to emulate the same way a human might understand these pages. Is there evidence of expertise? Does this look trustworthiness? Is it timely? Is it like sometimes a really old resource that's really established might be what you want, but sometimes you might want something that was published this morning? And they try and understand all of these things and many, many other things, looking at both your website and all the other sites on the net and comparing them, going, is this a good result? So this is a hugely complex system that is trying to behave like a person. It's very sophisticated.
Yeah, it's fascinating, really, and it's, as I mentioned before, it's a little bit daunting to try to think like, okay, how can I climb higher? You know, this is such a huge machine. How do I plug my little website in here and help it rank higher? And I think when I thought about this, and you and I spoke a little bit about this as we were planning this webinar out, that you can almost reverse engineer. You know, if you think like, what question do people ask Google that will lead them to your website, you know, and instead of saying like, okay, I need to make sure that I'm ranking for these keywords. It's like, well, you don't have to be everything to everyone, right? Like you can say like, I want to be the person that everyone comes to about a specific topic, whatever that might be. And you can think about it in reverse and say, what questions should people ask that they come to my website? And then that can help guide a little bit of the content that you do and some of your strategy.
Yeah, precisely. You've got to start from what problems can I solve rather than how do I sell my thing. Otherwise, you're going in the wrong direction, for sure.
Completely understand. And that was another thing that you and I spoke about, that back in the day, you used to be able to trick the algorithm. You know, you could, one of the tricks that I've heard was people would take a bunch of keywords and they just put them in white text so that it would not appear, it would just look like part of the background, and they would put it all over, and that to the machine, that looked like that website had the keyword mentioned 1,000 times, and so it must be very important. But in reality, it was tricking it. But nowadays, it's much like, I don't even think it's worth even trying to trick. Now it's more about just creating meaningful content that people want to engage with, and naturally you will rank higher.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be wasting energy looking for those kinds of tactics when it's going to be so much harder to trick Google into thinking that you're a good result than just doing the hard work and actually being a good result. That there are so few of those kinds of tactics now, and even when you find one occasionally, which does happen, they clamp down on it so quickly.
Yeah. So long story short, as we go through this, the best way to rank higher is just to produce in engaging content that will answer people's problems. But there's a bunch of other strategies that
we're done. Perfect.
Yeah,
Finished.
done. That's a wrap. Well, there's obviously a lot more that we want to talk about, and I wanted to start by just showing the search engine results page here and talk about a little bit of what we're seeing on this page. So I did a very simple search. I think it was car repair. You know, if you have a vehicle and you've ever done a search for car repair, you can see on the top left, and that might be a little bit small, so I apologize if it's difficult to read, but that is basically, it says sponsored. So it's a paid ad on the top left box. Moving to the box below, you have a map with businesses. So you can see a handful of car repair businesses, whether it's a mechanic shop or an oil change location or something like that. And it has links to their websites. It has reviews. It has a map. I'm based out of Austin, so it specifically tagged that geolocation for me. And then below all of that, you have just regular search results. You can see Yelp was the top one. And I chopped this up a little bit so it's a little bit easier, because obviously we're not going to be scrolling through this. But the box on the right was below the businesses. So you can see some of the Yelp and the AAA. And then below you also have, I think it's called rich results, I think is what that's called, where it says people also ask. So it has other questions, and if you click on the drop down, it will have answers from websites.
Yeah, and it might increasingly have other stuff. I think we come on some other examples, but even in these kind of basic results that are lists of links, there's increasingly different options and suggestions on how you might refine your search. Like if I search for pizza, do I want a recipe or do I want a local takeaway, etc.? And it might help step me through those processes, which is tricky because it's the same kind of narrative that as a brand and a website wanting to compete, you've got to be a good fit. Like it gets harder and harder to kind of force your way into that. And if you're saying, how do I rank first? The answer might be stop providing recipes and start selling pizza. And increasingly SEO has to be part of your business model rather than like a channel tactic that you apply. But we'll come on to some of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we do have a bunch of other rich results here.
Yeah. So this is increasingly kind of, unless you've been living under a rock, as you use Google, you will increasingly notice that more and more of the results look like this. And this is quite mobile centric, but the desktop view is increasingly similar. And these are tools and widgets and cards and resources. And what Google are trying to do is not just give the user a list of websites to choose from, but try and solve their problem in situ. And they're doing this by curating the best content and the best web pages and mashing all that up. So it's worth not only just trying to go, how do I solve these users' problems, but how do I solve all of Google's problems in a way that encourages them to feature me and cite my brand so that I can build recognition and preference. So not only does your marketing strategy for SEO need to go, it's not about selling things, it's about helping people, but it's also about being a general resource for people, because that's how you get the attention and get discovered and start to build some recognition. So it's pretty big.
Yeah. And a very simple analogy that sometimes I think of is just being a good neighbor, you know, like if you're going to a neighbor and you're saying like, hey, do you have a cup of flour I can borrow? You know, if someone gives you a handful of flowers that they pulled from their garden, then it's like, you know, this is, you completely misunderstood. This is not what I'm looking for. So, you know, it's like that being a good neighbor mentality, where it's like, I want to make sure that when people come to me and they're looking for a resource or education, that they're finding what they're looking for and that it's actually useful to them.
Yeah, and there are tactics you can use to get into these kinds of rich results, which we'll come on to in a bit. This is super valuable. Yeah, and the other thing to consider is that when we think about searching in Google, we typically think about that kind of search engine result page and list of results and maybe rich snippets. But it's also worth thinking this is part of a bigger ecosystem. So YouTube's a really good example. It's like the second biggest search engine in the world, also part of Alphabet that owns Google. Many of the same principles you might apply to optimizing your content on your website will apply there. And increasingly, for certain types of searches, Google might favor video results rather than conventional web pages. So there's a bigger ecosystem. And then Google Discover, which is a big part of Android and increasingly iPhones as well. You don't search with a keyword at all. Google are actively going out and finding interesting, relevant, timely articles that users might like and just surfacing them directly. So you've also got to be a news publisher and have editorial content and have authors with opinions who write interesting articles. Otherwise, you might find that people are solving their problems and building brand affinities without ever even typing keywords into Google. So this SEO game increasingly looks like a brand play and a multimedia play. And you've got to be thinking about, what is my content strategy across all of these environments?
It's a lot, but I think that's why we started by talking about how in the end, the best thing to do is focus on creating that good content, and Google will help get you to the right surfaces. But as Jono mentioned, there are some things that we can do to optimize for specific surfaces, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So moving on to on-page SEO. Excuse me. On-page SEO is the optimization of a website's individual pages to improve their search engine ranking and visibility through things like keyword research. So that's the text on the page. What does it actually mean? On-page SEO is essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, but on-page SEO is the content that you are publishing to your page. So doing keyword research, again, going with the pizza example, if you are a blog about recipes, then you might look for what are the most popular pizza that people cook at home, or the most popular pizza ovens that people can purchase, or something like that, and write articles about those various topics. And then creating and improving that content, publishing those blog articles, publishing videos if you're trying to get on YouTube, and making sure that those are up to date and current. And then I believe that we talked a little bit about demonstrating experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. But I think that's absolutely critical in this situation. If I remember correctly, Google will look at how long a user stays on a page after they land there before they go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so it's basically what they're looking at is how efficiently did I give them the right resource to answer their question. And so if you are a good resource and people land on your website and they say, okay, this is perfect, I'm learning, I want to buy my own pizza oven, this blog has a lot of great information, good comparisons, then it will rank you higher as opposed to another website that maybe doesn't talk about that at all.
Yeah, exactly. And I think keyword research can sound a bit technical and scary until you just think about it as market and user research. And if your terminology and the content you're writing doesn't use the kind of language that people are searching for, you're going to struggle. So maybe I want to write a blog about cat food, but it turns out that everybody talks about kitten food. I need to realign my expectations and my branding and my marketing to match the market demand. And that's really all keyword research is. And you can get some insight into data into people search for this word more than this word, or this word might be harder to compete on because the sites who are winning are bigger than this word. But really, it's about trying to get into the mindset of that searcher and saying, okay, we really want to think about their needs and the problems they're trying to solve, and then write content that aligns with that, whilst maybe being aware of competitors and where I can monetize some of that and so on and so forth. And then the other bit that's just worth picking up on is the EEAT thing. It's a really big part of Google's focus at the moment. And we know that as well as looking at things like dwell time and engagement on sites, they're looking at things like, is there evidence that this author is reputable? If you're writing blog posts and it's by John Smith, is there evidence that that person has relevant qualifications, that they know what they're talking about? Have they written for industry magazines that have good reputations and so on? So this is really about not just the words on the page and the keywords you're targeting, but really making sure that that content is good and useful and valuable and trustworthy. It's a huge deal.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on one quick thing with the keyword research is there are tools out there. One that I think we've spoken about is SEM Rush.
Yes.
And I think there's also Google Keyword Search Planner, or is it Google Keyword Planner?
That's useful. Yeah.
Yeah. And those are tools that I believe they have a free version that you can use to put in, like the example you used was cat food, so it's if you,
that's a really bad example, but yeah.
but it's okay. You can put that in there and it'll give you some results on how competitive those keywords are and how many people are searching for that kind of keywords and similar keywords that might relate to that. And you can use that to come up with your content strategy as you're writing blog posts or creating videos. So that's the on-page SEO that you can really focus on. And I think that's the part that really helps build your brand a lot is really focusing on that EEAT and making sure that you're publishing content that is relevant to the keywords that you want to rank for.
Nice. And then the bit we glossed over was the meta tag stuff, right? Which is this mess. So I guess the good news is if you've got the right platform and setup and tech, then you don't need to worry about this at all, because the process of publishing your pages and picking your right keywords, all of this should be done behind the scenes. So this is a screenshot of some output from a site running Yoast SEO, where somebody's picked their keywords and configured their page. But in theory, all of this should be behind the scenes, right? If you're trying to DIY this, you can handcraft all this. If you want to be writing text files in a notepad file and uploading them to servers, you can do this yourself. You probably shouldn't be in 2023. But yeah, so we don't really need to dwell on this too much. But all this happens behind the scenes in order to help convey that information to search engines like Google.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. And
that's my favorite bit. It's really sad I don't get to talk about this.
Yeah, it's happening. It's behind the scenes. If you use a tool like Yoast SEO, then it takes care of all of it for you and don't need to worry about it at all.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so off-page SEO. What is off-page SEO and how does it work and how do I leverage it?
So this is my least favorite bit of SEO, but it is a necessity. So one of the questions that Google has to answer is, as part of working out what they should rank, is which of these websites is better. And one of the ways that they can measure that is who is linking to it. And the principle of this is all based on citations in university, in academic research. You can tell which the most important scientific papers are by how many other scientific papers reference that one. You can use the same model for the web. This was a big part of how Google initially worked. The pages which are most linked to by other pages which are linked to are the most important. And you can envision this network of pages linking to each other, and the ones in the middle that have the most links pass more value around, and it's a big network effect. So Google are measuring, as they crawl the web, which pages are linking to which other ones, what text are they using, are these pages any good, what kinds of topics are they talking about? And they use that at scale as part of their ranking systems. Now, obviously, it's much more sophisticated than that. There's a whole bunch of kind of anti-spam techniques and all sorts of other analysis. But the principle is, if you can get other websites and pages to link to your pages, that's going to help boost you up the rankings because it's a signal that you're more relevant, that you're more authoritative. The way you do that, it's hard. There are two ways. You can cheat. You can buy links in the black market, for want of a better phrase. Google are very much against that. It's against their guidelines. If you get caught, you get penalized. It's a really bad plan, but many people do it. Definitely you shouldn't, not if you want to build a brand with longevity. Or you can do it the hard way, but the way that lasts and is worthwhile, which is, as the slide says, creating resources that convince other people to authentically reference you, having an opinion, standing out, differentiating, being newsworthy, and doing things that get attention from the kinds of people who do link to other sites, whether that's journalists or publications or people on Twitter. It's essentially doing PR, but with the intention of getting links as well as just coverage. So campaigns and activities and kind of standing out. That's the gist of it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest questions that I feel like I get whenever I talk with people about SEO is, how do I get those backlinks? How do I get other websites to link back to me, and the two that I hear, and you can tell me if what you think one is better or if you think neither of them are good. One is just reach out to other content creators and say, hey, can I do like a guest blog or something like that? And I want to write for you, or I want to update one of your articles and improve on it in some way. And then when you publish it, I just ask that you link back to my site or to my brand in some way. The other one that I heard is a little bit more tricky. It was talking about colleges. Like if you write like a paper for a college or something like that, if they publish it on their website, then you can benefit from the backlinks on that. I mean, obviously, I'm sure there's a bunch of other different ways to go about that. But Jonah, I'm curious if you've heard about either of those two, or if you have any preferences as to how you think people should get backlinks.
Yeah, I'd come across both of those. I would be nervous about anything that sounds like a quick win. Google is on the lookout for ways that you can cheat and shortcut this, because what they're trying to understand is, did this website endorse that website? And if you can find a way to automate or shortcut or cheat that, they're going to understand that, they're going to see that, they're going to shut it down. And you might not even know. So you'll be wasting time and money doing what you think is good link building when actually you're achieving nothing. I think the hard way is the right way, which is create the kind of content and campaigns and branding that attract attention. And that can be difficult if it's not the kind of thing you've done before, and if you've not spun up that engine and don't have the resources. But that's how you get people to link to you. And part of that is, yes, definitely is an outreach component. Is it when you've done the awesome stuff and you've built the cool, interesting things, you need to be telling journalists, you need to be getting in front of people, and you might use money or time or connections or influence to do that. You might be emailing people, you might be tweeting journalists, but you've got to have created and added the value in the first place.
I like that. The best way is just to become the authority on something and then let people come to you. That's the hardest, but probably the best, like you said, and the best for a long-lasting brand as well.
Yeah. And yeah, you can definitely shortcut this if you're not interested in building a brand with any longevity, but that's not a fun game to play.
Yeah. Okay, chapter 5, technical SEO. This one can be perhaps the most daunting out of all of them, because a lot of this is server side, things that happen not on your website, not on anyone else's website, or I guess they do happen on your website, but it's not the content that you're writing. As a creator, it's not something that you'll probably focus on. It's more on how the site is structured and the kind of peeling back the hood and getting into the nitty gritty of how the site is organized behind the scenes and how the HTML and the CSS files are written. It can be fairly overwhelming. But Jono, tell me, is there hope out there for someone like myself that's not technical that still wants to improve my technical SEO?
Yeah, definitely. I think ideally most people shouldn't need to care about a lot of this. As you say, this is kind of like deep under the hood stuff, but it can be super impactful, and even small issues and problems in any one of these areas can be really crippling for your SEO. The good news is if you're on WordPress, good work. A lot of this is quite good out of the box. Other platforms have pros and cons in different areas, but WordPress is one of the best kind of defaults. And then if you're running Yoast SEO on top of it, we elevate that up to another level. We fix a bunch of stuff that WordPress does badly. We add a bunch of stuff it doesn't do. Most of that will be sorted. If you've got a good hosting company, I can think of a few, then they'll take care of a bunch of the back end stuff like base performance and what type of software is your server running. I don't even know. A lot of that will be taken care of. Things like security as well. And then, yeah, a lot of this can be ignored safely because you know that it's in good hands. So yeah, as long as you've got a good tech stack, then you should be all right. WordPress and Yoast SEO and a good theme and not a million plugins that have bad reputations and aren't very well vetted, then you should be fine.
There are one or two that I think we can call attention to that maybe are a little bit more actionable than some of the others, and that's speed and performance. You know, how quickly your website
it's a big deal at the moment.
loads. So I know on Bluehost side of things, we go through a lot of effort to make sure that Bluehost and WordPress interacts really efficiently and that it loads very quickly. Just like any of us that have been to a search engine's results page and have clicked on something, if the site doesn't load very quickly, we don't want to spend time wasting for that. You know, we're very much an on-demand culture where we click it, we want it to be available right there in that moment. So that's something that we can sometimes focus on, is making sure that our sites are loading quickly. And then the other one was, I guess that's part of it, is images and videos, making sure that that's optimized for quick load as well.
And there's a whole bunch of work happening in WordPress core, which we're involved in as well, which is quite fun to try and do more of this automatically out of the box. But it's worth, if you're doing things with images and video, just spend a little bit of extra time saying, could I make this file a bit smaller? Could I streamline this video a bit? Do I really need to load that custom font? All of those things can add up.
Yeah, and the last one I wanted to call attention to is this device-specific optimization.
Yeah.
Which is just basically saying, make sure that your website is mobile friendly, right? More and more people are browsing the internet through their phones. And so you want to make sure that when someone loads your website on their phone, it looks correct. Nothing is moved around in weird places. And Google takes note of that, you know? So as Jonah said, that when you choose a theme, make sure that it automatically optimizes for mobile. And most WordPress themes do these days, but it's worth taking an extra few minutes and just double checking to make sure that whatever theme you choose, it does optimize for mobile friendly experience. And I know that not WordPress, but Bluehost, when we pre-install a theme, we make sure that all the themes that we use are optimized and are mobile friendly.
And also, if you want to really feel the pain, try it on a shaky 3G network connection and then see how it does. And if it turns out that you've got a big video on your homepage and all sorts of stuff loading in, if that takes 45 seconds, you're probably losing half your market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that test, the 3G mobile test.
That's painful. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to tell us a little bit about
Oh,
readout?
yeah. Yeah, sure. So I mentioned earlier on, we were looking at examples of rich results formats and all the kinds of cards and widgets that turn up in the search results and things like that people also asked and map listings. A lot of those are powered by structured data. And this looks a bit overwhelming, but the concept is pretty simple. We have like search engines read the content on the page, they evaluate what you're doing, and as part of that, they go and look at meta tags for things like keywords and meta descriptions and titles and what was the date this was published on. There's a more sophisticated level of that they're looking for nowadays, which is where you explicitly in your page code include descriptions of the content. And if this example is a product page, for example, I say, here is the name of the product, and here are the images, and here's the description, and here is the brand that sells it. We really include code in the page that's specifically designed to communicate all the key information to Google. This is super important because it directly powers things like on the right, where you get star ratings in the search results and my pricing information's in there, and I get icons next to my images and 100 other versions of this. This is a huge part of modern technical SEO, and it's driving all of these shiny, shiny new toys, which get you the cut through, get you the click through rate. Even in places where you might not be able to outrank competitors conventionally, you might get a fancy rich result above them that they're not eligible for. So this stuff is really cutting edge. The good news is, again, you don't need to know about any of this. Yoast SEO does all of this in the background for you automatically, and you just get the shiny, shiny results. So yeah, nice to know, but don't need to get too deep.
Yeah, and I think that's great, and I think that's one of the reasons why we wanted to call out the rich results earlier. Is it's like, you know, when we were talking about the structure, you have the paid position as the top, then the local SEO, which we'll talk about shortly, and then the rich snippets are very highly ranked. So if you can optimize your site so that they qualify for one of those results, then you are already getting a leg up on any of your competitors and ensuring that your page will result at a much higher position than someone else's. So
yeah, sure. This stuff has a huge impact.
Yeah, absolutely critical. Local SEO, perfect segue.
Nice.
Local SEO, we saw back on slide 5 or 6 was the car repair, where it had a couple mechanics. It had the reviews on there. It had links to their website. It had directions. It had their phone number, so you could call them. This is SEO that is specifically targeted due to a geography. It's linked to the location where you're searching from. And most easily, I feel like that's seen in Google Maps. You know, if you're looking for like a hotel, or the example we use was car repair, then even as you move the map around, it'll give you more results as that moves around. But I think for someone that's interested in getting their site ranked or getting their store ranked, this is something that can be absolutely critical. Make sure that you have a Google business profile and that it's up to date, and that you register your business for Google Business.
Yeah, it's so important, and increasingly so. And they're adding more and more features to that. If you have a business that people can walk up to and is open to public visitation, absolutely critical to have this and to be micromanaging it and to be on top of it. And things like I mentioned in a minute, but reviews are really important, for example. But also the speed at which you reply to reviews is really important. So increasingly, your Google business profile becomes kind of like the beating heart of your local presence and strategy. So yeah, you need to be managing that actively.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that there was a component about the response rate for that.
Yeah,
that's very interesting. This is also a great way to help yourself stand out again from potential competitors. You know, if you can secure your Google business, and if you are a lawn service or something like that, or an electrician, or something that probably is not selling nationally, you know, or in other countries or anything like that, you're probably a little bit more of a localized business. And I feel like a handful of small businesses and people that are working on getting their brand off the ground fit into that category, then this is a great way for you to be found locally. We talked about citations and reviews, proximity. I think we saw in that example, Google takes a look at where I'm searching from, and then it serves up results based on a proximity to that search. So
and that's super hard to gain, right? Because it's hard to move your business, but you have to compete harder in citations and reviews in order to compensate.
Yeah. And I think I see it's becoming more and more popular for people to ask for reviews, like that's a part of the strategy, I feel like, to increase your
Yeah.
reviews, which sounds very simple, but sometimes just people forget, you just need to ask for the review. And sometimes people will offer an incentive and say, 15% off your next purchase if you go and review the site, because that can weigh into your search results, where you land on the page.
Yeah, and tactically, you can link directly to that give us a review pop-up you get in the Google Maps for your listing. So you can put that on a business card with a QR code or a form in an email. And you really want to be driving those reviews because they really power where you rank. Even bad ones, as long as you're responding and you're managing it, the volume of reviews is really the big thing.
I think that's really important for sure. Google My Business. Here we go. We got a screenshot of what that looks like. We mentioned before you can go in and register. I believe you can register for free, register your business. And this is the landing page for Google My Business. And over on the right, it has the results, which I'm sure all of us have seen at some place as we've gone across the internet. But I like that even from Google, a lot of people will allow you to reserve a table or book an appointment or do something directly from Google. So having that integration can add another revenue channel as well to your business, and gives one more place so that people, as much time as you might spend on your website, people don't need to land on it in order to give you money. They have the opportunity to book something with you straight from Google.
Yeah, that's huge. This is increasingly your homepage.
Yeah. So it's absolutely important that the information is correct and that you're monitoring that. And as Jonah mentioned, that you're constantly responding to any feedback that comes in from there.
Yeah.
This is an example of the reviews in proximity that we were talking about before. Car repair, very simple search, but you can see that there's a couple different results. You have website options, direction options, and you can see the one that has the highest results, if my eyes are not failing me, is the one that has the most search reviews. It's not necessarily the highest reviewed. It's 4.5, and there's others that are 4.7, but it has the most reviews. So there's, as you're mentioning, there's value into having a place that people want to review for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, measuring and improving your SEO. So we've talked a lot about the different aspects that go into this, and a couple tips here and there on how to improve it, but how do you actually measure it and how do you improve it? And we've given a fairly high level and also in-depth look at SEO, but what does it actually mean to the small business, and how do you actually turn this into something that you can go and apply on your website today?
Yeah, so measurement is harder than other channels. If you're doing paid ads, you measure how many impressions did I get, how many clicks, what's my conversion rate. We get some of that, but not enough to make a kind of real nice end-to-end model that we can manage and say, if I spend X, I'll get Y. Unfortunately, it's much closer to kind of traditional PR and brand building. And you have to have a little bit of faith that doing all the good work up front will mean that you grow your brand and visibility and outcomes on the other side. That said, you can definitely monitor how much organic traffic is my website getting through something like Google Analytics or Google Search Console, which we'll mention again later. But that's Google's own property for telling you how your website's doing and managing issues in search. If you don't already have and manage your account for that, I would drop everything you're doing, close this webinar, go and sign up for that now. That's the most important thing you can do. It will give you statistics on impressions and clicks and which pages are ranking for which kinds of terms. It's a little bit blunt, but it's super useful. So that's good. I think more importantly than traffic, though, is probably, is the traffic I'm getting engaging with my website? And is any of that converting? Because we're not doing this for traffic. We're doing it for whatever revenue outcomes you have. That said, a lot of the kind of traffic you're going to attract if you're doing good SEO are people you're solving problems for, right? We talked about that earlier. You're helping, you're guiding, you're assisting, you're not trying to sell. So a lot of that traffic isn't going to convert, but some of it would, and that'll be more than you would have had otherwise. So it's worth looking at those kinds of key steps through something like the Google Analytics or other tools. You want to get a little bit closer to the tactical, how am I doing? You can definitely monitor keyword rankings. You can do some of that through Google Search Console, and there are a million other tools like we mentioned SEMrush earlier, SEMrush. There are others in the market that will do you, here are all your keywords, here are your positions through time, here are the pages. Don't get too sucked down in that. You can lose days clicking around, and really your strategy is still going to be create great content. You're not going to find too many gems there. And then in terms of kind of like, how am I doing on some of the foundational capabilities, if you want to measure things like site speed and performance and device friendliness we mentioned just now, you can search for Google's Core Web Vitals tools. You can use Page Speed Insights and Google Lighthouse are really good for kind of giving you scores on how well are you doing on accessibility, on mobile friendliness, on page speed. And then the hardest bit across all of this is if we're saying that the most important thing is providing good resources and helping users, really the best thing you can do is ask people. So survey your visitors, ask them what they were looking for, whether they found it, how they rate your experience, whether or not they understood the blog post, check whether people are reading things, and actually get a bit of a feedback loop from, am I helping people? And if you are, then great, because all the other things will fall into line. So yeah, sadly not as easy as clicks and sales and impressions, but all the tools are here.
I think one of the last places I saw that on was like a help article. I want to say on Samsung. I think it was like I have a Samsung appliance, and so I was looking for something was going wrong with it, and I landed on a help article, and at the bottom of the help article it said, "Did this answer your question?" And that's
excellent. And you feed that back into your analytics, and now you've got some really nice metrics.
Yeah. So it was cool. I should have taken a screenshot to share, but that's obviously a fairly well-known company that's doing that at scale. But yeah, I think looking at those metrics, absolutely critical. Okay, tools for measurement and analysis. I think you've spoken about some of these. Are there any others that we haven't talked about yet, or any that you in particular want to highlight?
I mentioned briefly Page Speed Insights, which I should have added on this, but I think, in fact, SiteKit already includes an integration into that, so you don't need that one as a standalone. Now, I think this is a good starting set. There are definitely alternatives for all of these. All of these are free. Hotjar has a free version, I think. Yeah, if you have money to spend, you can go and get fancier versions. If you have other preferences, you can replace these with others. But in principle, something like this set will give you most of what you need to analyze. How is my site doing? Where am I against my competitors? Where might there be keyword market opportunities? What's happening on my site? I guess Google Analytics 4 is the contentious one because it's not everybody's favorite product since they're retiring Universal Analytics, and GA4 is not very user-friendly, but yeah, maybe swap that out for your analytics platform of choice that's a little less cumbersome.
Yeah, Google Analytics is definitely a beast all on its own. It can easily be lost, but I think a lot of this is super useful and super helpful, and Google Analytics is insanely helpful, but it can be a large beast to tackle for sure.
SiteKit's a really nice starting point. It runs within WordPress. It ties it into Google Analytics and Page Speed Insights and AdWords if you're doing that, and a bunch of other stuff, and gives you one nice dashboard which tells you what's going on. The only thing it's missing is like the competitive context. You won't know how you're doing against other sites, which you really want something like SEMrush for.
Does it give you kind of like a checklist? Because I know we've talked about like the technical SEO, and I'm curious.
Not really, but Yoast SEO will.
Perfect.
Nice. There we go. Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent.
So tell us, we've covered so much today. Tell us about Yoast SEO and what it does and how it'll help. Sure.
So we skipped over the last point on the last slide, which I will start with.
Okay, we'll go back.
Oh, very nice. The difficult bit about all of this is there isn't really a magic bullet. So you might speed up your site, you might write some great content, you might get some great links, and nothing might happen because if we go right back to the beginning, what you're trying to do is convince Google that of the trillions of web pages that it has, for that one moment in time where somebody has searched for car repair, that you have the best page. And if you've got the 10th best page, you get very little. But if you've got the second or the third page, maybe you start to get some. So really, the SEO game is about constant small improvements, of iterations of doing, of improving, of tweaking that content, of making that thing better, of getting that extra link, of spotting that opportunity, and building a habit out of that. Because that over time, suddenly you find that all of these traffic lines, you go, I got 10 visits a day, I got 100 visits a day, I got 1,000 visits a day. I no longer need to spend money on advertising because I'm getting 1 million visits a day. These things are very achievable, but they take time and energy and effort. So how do you shortcut that? We cheat by skipping the slides. Very nice. Yoast SEO is the company I work for. It's, I guess, why I'm here today. We are mostly known for being the best SEO plugin for WordPress, but also on Shopify now, which is quite fun. We have a free version that will help you take care of most of the stuff we've talked about. It will solve 95% of all the technical SEO stuff we discussed, and it will give you tools and frameworks and advice and guidelines for what should I be writing about. Maybe you should make this content a bit longer. The way that you're writing is potentially inaccessible to a certain audience. You should simplify this paragraph. You should mention this keyword more. Those kinds of hand-holding processes, and it scores you as you go through and says, okay, you've said that you want this page to rank for this keyword. Well, maybe you need to do a bit more work, and it will help guide you through that kind of day-to-day optimization process. There is a paid version as well, which the free version will give you everything that you need strictly, but the paid version will give you extra toys and tools, will help you work faster and more efficiently. So if you've got the budget and you really want to invest in SEO and competing, it's worth doing the upgrade. That unlocks a whole bunch of shiny stuff. Yeah, most of what it does is fixes all the technical stuff and then supports you in the optimization process. It won't automate SEO for you. Anything that claims that it will is either garbage or lying or cheating or some combination of those. You still have to do the hard work, but we will help you through that. And also, lastly, I guess we have an SEO Academy if you want to do the learning yourself and kind of level up your knowledge and empower you to do more stuff. And we also have add-on plugins for local, which we mentioned, news, which is a big space for doing newsworthy stuff, video if you're publishing video, and WooCommerce add-on if you're selling online. So yeah, hopefully we make a lot of this a lot easier. Most of the stuff we've talked about, you either shouldn't need to know about, or we should be making much easier. So yeah, hopefully this is the magic short.
That's awesome. And that was one of the things that we for sure wanted to talk about. You know, we wanted to make sure we're educating the people that tuned in today so that they're familiar with the different aspects of SEO. And if you want to go out and do it on your own, you're welcome to. It's a lot. It can be very overwhelming. There's so many different elements that go into it. But we also wanted to talk about Yoast SEO. I suspect a lot of people are already familiar with it, especially if they're in the WordPress space, but it takes care of 95 to 98, whatever the percentage is. It takes care of a lot of the technical side and gives you a lot of guidance on the content side, which gets you 10 steps ahead of someone that is trying to do it manually on their own.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Hundreds of steps. I wouldn't want to be doing it manually on my own nowadays. Oh yeah, and this is what it looks like. Yeah, so this is a few slices of the interface, which yeah, again, probably many people have seen. But on the left, we have some examples of the kinds of things that it will identify as you're writing content, and it will give you color scores on how well you're doing on that. And if you are not doing very well, it will link you to advice and guidance that will help you. You can highlight, it will highlight bits of the text where there are problems and so on. And then it will help you do things like, I really want to craft and tailor how my results should look in search. I want to micromanage every pixel and every character because the click-through rate might be better, because I want to really nail that messaging within the space I've got, and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. But yeah, there's all sorts of toys and tools.
So when I was asking about the tool earlier, that if it had the checklist, I guess this is the tool.
Yeah, definitely.
You can see on the list, it literally has the checklist, and the green means good. And obviously this is an example of someone that's doing it very well. But if everything's not great, then it'll give you some tips and say, you know, maybe you need it a little bit more here, or if you're trying to rank for this keyword, let's try to develop a little bit more there. So it really is kind of a partner for your website to help improve your results on the search engine results page.
Yeah, exactly. And there's like multiples of these lists. I think this is the SEO one. Yeah, there's a readability one. There's one about inclusive language. There's some advanced tools as well. So yeah, there's lots going on here. But it's all designed to kind of help you get from 6 out of 10 to 9 out of 10.
I think it's awesome. And with that, we make it to our Q&A portion of the presentation.
Nice.
We are short on time, but I think we covered a lot of important information. So I'm happy with where we're at. I do want to try to get through a couple of these questions that came in. Jono, if you'll allow me, I will be the moderator and just rapid fire these questions at you, and you let me know.
Yep, go for it.
If there's some that are too specific or require too much detail, then let me know and we can pass on those, and then we'll reach out via email and make sure that people get an answer. So
great.
Looking through here, why is my competitor beating me? How do I outrank them? My site is clearly better than theirs. Love it.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I get this all the time because every business owner and every CEO, of course, they love their website. It's their child. They've invested in it. Maybe it is better, but maybe it's not faster, and maybe it doesn't have as many links, and maybe your blog isn't very good, or maybe your competitor. Like, for which term are they beating you? For which type of user? In which location? Like, this is all quite nuanced. And Google is the smartest system that has ever been built by mankind to make these kinds of analysis and decisions. And it's not perfect, but if your competitor is beating you, there's probably a reason. And it might be 1,000 small things, right? It's unlikely to be one magic bullet. And the answer is going to be go and make your stuff better.
That's great. Okay. How long does it take to start ranking on Google or to see my efforts make a difference? That's a great question.
Yeah, and annoyingly, I'll give the consultant answer of it depends. If you've got a really big site, if you're the Guardian or the BBC or Wikipedia, any changes you make or any new pages you add are going to perform immediately, like in seconds. If you're a brand new website, a brand new brand that isn't very well trusted and doesn't have many links, it might take weeks. It might take even longer. It depends what you're doing. If you write the world's best blog post about car insurance, car repair, and an authoritative journalist links to it and says, this is incredible, you will rank #1 overnight, maybe. But it's hard to get that kind of coverage. So yeah, none of this, unless you're already big, none of this is really immediate. You're talking about kind of growing an authority and a reputation over time. You could see some small wins in weeks if you're starting out, but the big wins are going to be 6, 12, 18 months.
And correct me if I'm mistaken, but I remember at one point you could signal to Google that you like your site. You could like submit your site to be crawled to kind of kickstart that, which I don't know if that saves any time anymore, or if they're good enough that they're crawling it by the time you publish, or how that works.
I would register a Google Search Console account for the domain, get Yoast SEO installed, which will create automatically an XML sitemap, which is like a map of all the URLs on your site. You can point them at the location of that. There's a tool where you can submit it, and then they know about your site, and you don't have to worry about it. And then it's all down to, are they going to evaluate it and rank it? But you don't need to be doing anything special to get your site submitted or discovered, other than creating that account.
Perfect. Okay, let's see. My rankings are dropping, but I haven't done anything. What's going on?
Yeah, this happens all the time. I see lots of people showing like ranking charts, and yeah, the lines are going down. And the answer's in the question. You haven't done anything. Well, your competitors have, and the market's probably changed, and maybe seasonality has changed. Maybe there's external factors like the weather, or how long it is till payday, or I don't know, a global economic crisis. You have to be doing things. You have to be reacting. You have to be creating content, solving user problems, and the world changes. People's needs change, their expectations change, and your competitors are doing things constantly all around you. And if they're incrementally improving and you're sitting still, well, yeah, your numbers are going to go down. Tricky. None of this is stable.
Yeah, very tricky. And I think I see some websites that will kind of refresh their content, so instead of writing a completely new blog post, they'll go back through and update it to make sure that it's still current, and then republish it.
Yeah, that can be a great tactic. And yeah, that can be really great. Some types of content really benefit from that. There are topics and ideas and blog posts where I want the current version of it from this year that's been updated, top 10 guide to whatever, I don't know. Yeah, that can be great, but I wouldn't rely on that as a singular strategy. I would also be maybe creating new stuff and understanding what people are searching for and trying to solve their problems. But yeah, if you've got stuff that benefits from being updated, do spend that energy. If users are landing on your site and they're seeing content from 2013 that's no longer correct, that is going to be problematic.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. Let's see. One or two more questions in here. Is it better to have a lot of links from small websites or one or two backlinks from bigger websites?
Oh, tricky. It's again, this is about reputation, right? Would you rather have a celebrity mention you on live TV and say you're the best person in the world, or would you like 10,000 people in your local town to all know your name? Maybe both.
Both?
Yeah, it's going to depend somewhat on what types of links have you already got. Like if you've got lots of low level kind of ground coverage, maybe you would do well by getting some really big hitters. And conversely, if you're focusing all your energy on how do I get covered by the Guardian and forgetting the fact that you really need 1,000 small bloggers to be saying, hey, I really like this website because it's got great recipes or great resources. Yeah, you really want to be hitting both ends of that spectrum.
I like it. Okay, let's do one or two more because I do believe we are pretty much up on our time. Oh, here's a good one. Does social media help increase my SEO ranking? Because that's got to be a big backlink, right? If you're linking to your website from there.
From everybody's favorite Elon Musk social media platform. I guess the technical answer is no, but I think there's a more interesting answer. Almost all links from social media sites are no followed, which puts some code in which says to Google, don't endorse this, don't pass value. They do still follow it. It's a really bad phrase, but they will not count the value of the link. However, we talked earlier about if you're going to create great resources and solve people's problems, one of the things you need to do is get that in front of people. And social media is a great way to do that. Like a lot of content gets discovered through Reddit, through Twitter, through Facebook, through LinkedIn. So even if those links aren't benefiting your rankings, suddenly people, which includes potential customers, journalists, etc., are discovering your content, they're retweeting it, they're sharing it, they're visiting through those links, they're talking about it. That might mean that more people link to it, and that might affect your rankings. And Google certainly crawls through these links, so it's also helpful for discovery. So it's very unlikely that there's a direct impact, but having content that does well on social might correlate and influence your rankings quite nicely.
I like that. That's a great answer. And I'm curious, and you don't have to give your opinion if you don't want to, but do you like that they do the no follow, or do you feel like that helps, or do you feel like they're being selfish and not sharing their strong backlink power?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? So NoFollow came out in what, 2011? Maybe even no, I don't know. It's been so long, been in the game too long. But the principle was like, I want to be able to say, don't pass value through this link because it might be spam or I don't trust it. And then suddenly it became quite a big deal. Everyone, you know, all the Wikipedia, all the social networks go, no, we don't want to accidentally endorse stuff. But then that does do weird things, right? Because you do kind of want Google to value and incorporate those, and you're also putting a kind of a weird burden on these platforms and websites to regulate their links in a way that's only really beneficial for Google. So they've kind of created this technical tax on the web that we're all now deciding which sites are and aren't valuable. Yeah, it's all a bit weird. Right. I know there's a lot of SEOs who feel very strongly about it, but it's I think we're kind of stuck with it now.
All right, I'm going to go to the next slide, which just has a little bit more assistance from Bluehost. If you have any questions, and I think we're going to go with one or two more questions. Have you seen any questions that you would really like to have answered before we end?
Yeah, there's one of my favorite ones, which comes up quite often, which is essentially how long should my blog posts be? How long should my content be? And there's so much bad advice about this. Once upon a time, there was somebody who was quite senior in the SEO space said blog posts need to be minimum 300 words. And in Yoast, we suggest a minimum as well. I think it might even be 300 words, because anything less than that, and you're really not saying anything. Right. But then what's happened is everybody says, okay, I'm going to write 5 blog posts a week, and they're all going to be 300 words. You know, well, it's not the point. How long should a page be is how long does it need to be in order to answer the user queries and to be good? And even beyond that, how long does it need to be great? And you can subdivide page, you might put headings and nice structure into pages so that it's skimmable. You can include images and visuals and tables of content. You can make long pages that are still accessible, still summarize points without kind of overdoing it. And then the inverse is true as well. You quite often see people where a page should have a really simple answer and a really simple summary, like how do I boil an egg? how do I boil an egg doesn't need 2,000 words, but how do I choose, how do I buy a house might. And it's about really, again, understanding what is the user problem, what is getting the headspace of that audience and go, how do I create the resource that A, helps them have a great day, B, might get linked to and referenced by other sites because it's such a good asset and resource. So how long should the thing be? However long it needs to be to be awesome. And that's probably not 300 words.
I like that. The bigger focus is on answering the question effectively, you know, and if you're a creative writer and you write in a really entertaining way, then maybe you can come up with 2,000 words on how to boil an egg.
Yeah, that might be great. That could be an incredible resource that everyone enjoys and
exactly. And it's like it answers the question and it keeps you on the page for a while because you're a captivating writer. My suspicion would be that most people are not that captivating of a writer, and therefore the focus should be on answering the question efficiently. But awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time today. I appreciate everyone that stuck with us and tuned in today. And I hope you learned something. Excuse me. The focus and I think the key takeaway that I would like to give to everyone is to work on generating content that is helpful, work on building a brand that is useful for people, that people want to engage with. That's that. And using Yoast SEO, I feel like those are the two best things you can do to increase your ranking. Yoast SEO will take care of the technical side. It'll give you some tips on how to create engaging contents, and then be creative, let your brand voice shine through, and give engaging content to people, and you'll start going up the ranks quickly.
Yeah, and I think don't be afraid to have an opinion. Like if you're going to be publishing content and writing pages and blog posts, have a real human do that with a name and a face and experience, and have them write something that means something to them, that they're passionate about, that's going to get people talking, because that's the kind of stuff that people will enjoy and link to.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. And thank you, Jono, for stopping by and teaching us about SEO.
Thanks for having me. It was lovely.
Talk to y'all soon.